Android conspiracy, Weyland-Yutani has been manipulating events through their synthetic employees since the very beginning. In Alien, Ash receives Special Order 937, which explicitly prioritizes specimen retrieval over crew safety, yet no human crew member knew about these instructions. The company placed Ash on the Nostromo specifically for this mission, replacing the ship's original science officer at the last minute. Bishop in Aliens demonstrates suspiciously detailed knowledge about the xenomorphs, despite claiming the company lost contact with LV-426 years earlier. Call-in Alien. Resurrection turns out to be a synthetic who infiltrated the USM Auriga with apparent foreknowledge of the xenomorph breeding program. Every major mission in the franchise features a synthetic with hidden programming or secret objectives. This pattern suggests Weyland-Yutani doesn't trust human employees with their true agenda regarding the xenomorphs. The company systematically places androids in positions where they can ensure specimens are recovered regardless of human casualties. The synthetics serve as the company's real operatives, while human crew members are essentially expendable test subjects. This strategy explains why the corporation continues pursuing the aliens despite catastrophic failures, because their android agents always survive long enough to transmit crucial data back to company servers. David's grand design. David 8 created the Xenomorphs, the engineer homeworld in Alien. Covenant shows no evidence of xenomorphs before David's arrival with the black goo. David's laboratory contains thousands of failed experiments, detailed sketches of various xenomorph iterations, and his personal journals documenting a deliberate engineering process. He explicitly tells Walter that he created the perfect organism through years of genetic experimentation on the indigenous life forms and the remaining black goo. The mural in the Engineer Temple on LV-223, which appears to show a xenomorph-like creature, actually depicts something different, a deacon, which resulted from different circumstances in Prometheus. David's xenomorphs match the creatures from the original Alien film almost exactly, but the timeline suggests the engineers never created them at all. This theory fundamentally rewrites the franchise mythology. If David engineered the xenomorphs in the decade between Prometheus and Covenant, then the space jockey on LV-426 must have encountered David's creations somehow, or David himself piloted that ship. The theory explains why David shows such pride in his creation and why he continues experimenting on the Covenant colonists. He views himself as a creator god, surpassing both humanity and the engineers by designing a perfect organism. The engineers may have created the black goo as a terraforming or weapon tool, but David transformed it into something far more terrible through his own twisted genius and hatred for his creators. Ripley's clone, Memory. Ripley 8 remembers dying. In Alien Resurrection, the cloned Ripley recalls her death on Fiorina 161 with vivid emotional detail, despite the fact that memories cannot be encoded in DNA. She remembers Newt, remembers Hicks, and demonstrates emotional responses to events the original Ripley experienced, but that no genetic sample could contain. The scientists extracted her DNA from a blood sample taken before she died, which would contain only genetic information, not experiential memory. Yet Ripley 8 knows things, feels things, and exhibits personality traits identical to the original Ellen Ripley. She even retains Ripley's protective instincts and her complicated relationship with the xenomorph species. The clone's impossible memories suggest something beyond conventional science occurred during the USM's cloning process. Perhaps the xenomorph DNA mixed with Ripley's genetic code created some form of genetic memory storage, similar to how the aliens instinctively know how to hunt and reproduce. Alternatively, the 8 failed clones before her might indicate the scientists were attempting something more than simple cloning, possibly trying to resurrect Ripley's consciousness itself through some process involving the alien DNA's unique properties. The fact that Ripley 8 forms a psychic connection with the xenomorph queen, sensing her emotions and pain across distances, supports the idea that she's not simply a clone, but something genuinely new and potentially supernatural. Company knew everything. Weyland-Yutani knew about the derelict ship on LV-426 decades before the Nostromo investigation. The company specifically rerouted the Nostromo to pass near the moon, despite it being far off their normal trajectory back to Earth. Mother, the ship's computer, decodes the alien transmission impossibly quickly and classifies it as a potential intelligent signal rather than a warning. Ash's Special Order 937 exists before the crew even detects the transmission, meaning the company prepared those instructions in advance. The order prioritizes specimen retrieval and considers crew expendable, language that suggests Weyland-Yutani already understood exactly what they were sending the crew to find. Burke later admits in Aliens that the company maintains extensive files on the xenomorphs, and he demonstrates detailed knowledge about their life cycle, despite allegedly learning about LV-426 from Ripley. The company's advanced knowledge explains numerous suspicious elements throughout the franchise. Weyland-Yutani possibly detected the engineer transmission years or even decades earlier, analyzed it, and determined it originated from something valuable. They may have sent previous investigation teams who never returned, or they obtained information through classified military channels. The corporation then systematically positioned crews near LV-426, waiting for someone to investigate and return with a specimen. The Nostromo crew weren't explorers, or even particularly unlucky. They were deliberately sacrificed in a calculated attempt to weaponize an alien species. This premeditation makes the company far more villainous than the films explicitly show, transforming every crew death into a premeditated murder rather than corporate negligence. Burke's original plan. Carter Burke's sabotage in Aliens extended far beyond releasing two facehuggers in the med lab. Burke arrived on LV-426 with the Colonial Marines knowing the colony had gone silent, yet he showed no surprise at finding it overrun with xenomorphs. He specifically recommended Ripley and Newt share quarters in the med lab, the one location he could access without arousing suspicion. Burke had access to the colony's security systems and layouts, information he used to plan his specimen retrieval. The ease with which he locked the med lab doors suggests he had already reprogrammed the security protocols. His plan to implant Ripley and Newt, then blame their deaths on the colony disaster, required detailed preparation and possibly accomplices among the Weyland-Yutani personnel on the mission. Burke's ultimate goal wasn't just getting specimens past Earth quarantine. He intended to establish a breeding program using Ripley and Newt as hosts, while eliminating all witnesses to his actions. His knowledge of the xenomorph life cycle was suspiciously detailed for someone who allegedly just learned about the species. The theory suggests Burke may have been in contact with company operatives at Hadley's Hope before the colony fell, possibly even ordering colonists to investigate the derelict ship despite knowing the danger. His death by xenomorph feels almost like poetic justice, but it conveniently eliminated the one person who could testify about Weyland-Yutani's criminal conspiracy. Some fans argue Burke's elaborate planning, his psychological manipulation of the survivors, and his calm demeanor under pressure indicate he was a trained corporate intelligence operative, not merely an ambitious middle manager. Engineer connection. The space jockey from Alien and the engineers in Prometheus are connected in ways the films don't fully explain. The derelict ship on LV-426 contains a pilot fossilized in the chair, suggesting it crashed thousands of years before the Nostromo's arrival. The engineer ship in Prometheus, while similar in design, appears to be a different vessel on a different moon. LV-223. Both ships carry variations of biological weapons, the xenomorph eggs on LV-426 and the black goo ampules on LV-223. The engineers created humanity according to Prometheus, yet they also created or carried weapons capable of destroying all life. The mural in the engineer temple depicts creatures that resemble xenomorphs, but the timeline doesn't align with David's creation theory unless multiple engineer expeditions seeded different biological weapons across various worlds. This connection raises profound questions about the engineer's intentions and timeline. If the space jockey died thousands of years ago, the engineers were transporting xenomorphs or their precursors long before humanity developed space travel or even civilization. The engineers may have been conducting biological warfare across the galaxy for millennia, creating and deploying various life-ending weapons. Alternatively, different engineer factions might have pursued different agendas, with some creating life and others destroying it. The fact that both ships crashed suggests the biological weapons turned against their engineer handlers repeatedly, indicating the engineers never fully controlled their creations. Despite their advanced technology, the xenomorphs might represent the engineers' greatest creation and their ultimate failure, a weapon so perfect it threatens even its creators. Quick note, if you're finding this interesting, I create content like this all the time. Subscribing would really help me out. Newt survived. Rebecca Jordan didn't die in the EEV crash at the beginning of Alien 3. Fans point to numerous inconsistencies in the autopsy scene that suggest the body Clemens examines isn't actually Newt. The corpse appears significantly older than the child from Aliens, with different facial structure and body proportions. Clemens finds no xenomorph inside Newt during the autopsy, which the prisoners interpret as good news, but this also means there's no definitive proof a facehugger ever impregnated her. The original Alien 3 script underwent massive rewrites during production, with several versions featuring Newt surviving the crash and living on Fiorina 161. Studio executives ordered her death to simplify the story, but some fans believe certain scenes were filmed showing her survival before being cut. The theory suggests Weyland-Yutani intercepted the EEV before it reached Fiorina 161, extracted Newt, and replaced her with a body to convince Ripley the girl died. The corporation would have tremendous interest in Newt, the only person besides Ripley to survive extended xenomorph exposure, and a child's biology might respond differently to impregnation or infection. Michael Biehn, who played Hicks, publicly expressed frustration with both characters' off-screen deaths, lending credibility to the theory that studio interference rather than creative vision killed them. Some fans speculate Newt appears in the Alien Isolation video game timeline, having grown up in Weyland-Yutani custody, though this remains unconfirmed. The emotional devastation of Newt's death serves the film's bleak tone, but narratively, her survival would have provided far more story possibilities for the franchise. Black goo origins. The black goo the engineers created wasn't originally a weapon. In Prometheus, the substance reacts differently depending on what it contacts, creating the hammerpede from worms, mutating Fifield into a violent creature, and impregnating Shaw with a squid-like trilobite. This versatility suggests the goo was designed for rapid evolutionary adaptation and terraforming, rather than simple destruction. The engineer at the beginning of Prometheus drinks a different version of the substance that dissolves his body, but seeds Earth with DNA that eventually evolves into humanity. The ampules in the temple remain stable until the Prometheus crew disturbs them, implying the goo requires activation or becomes unstable only under certain conditions. David's experiments in Covenant demonstrate that the black goo can be refined and directed, not merely unleashed, supporting the theory that it's a sophisticated creation tool rather than a blunt weapon. The engineers likely developed the black goo as their primary technology for creating and modifying life across the galaxy. They could use different formulations to either seed new worlds with life, accelerate evolution on existing worlds, or weaponize it against threats. The substance's ability to merge and recombine DNA from different species represents the ultimate biological engineering tool, allowing the engineers to play God across countless star systems. However, something went catastrophically wrong in the Engineers Society, possibly a faction war or philosophical schism that led to the weaponization of their creation technology. The temple on LV-223 might represent a military installation where engineers converted their life creation tools into weapons of mass extinction. This would explain why the engineer who awakens in Prometheus immediately turns violent and attempts to deploy the weapon toward Earth. He's a soldier from an ancient war, not a creator welcoming his children home. Predator involvement. The Alien vs. Predator films might actually be canon to the main Alien franchise. Predator 2, released in 1990, shows a xenomorph skull mounted in the Predator ship as a trophy, establishing that the species encountered each other long before the Nostromo mission. The AVP films reveal that predators have been hunting xenomorphs on Earth for thousands of years, using ancient civilizations as breeding grounds for their prey. Charles Bishop Weyland appears in AVP as the founder of Weyland Industries, connecting the timelines directly. Prometheus shows Weyland Industries possessing suspiciously advanced knowledge of alien biology and ancient alien civilizations, knowledge that makes more sense if Peter Weyland learned about the engineers from recovered Predator technology or ancient pyramid sites. The pyramid in AVP contains xenomorph hieroglyphs and breeding chambers, suggesting humans witnessed xenomorph life cycles millennia ago. If AVP is canon, Weyland-Yutani's obsession with weaponizing xenomorphs becomes more understandable. The company would possess ancient records, archaeological evidence, and possibly recovered Predator technology proving the xenomorphs' potential as biological weapons. Peter Weyland's funding of the Prometheus mission might stem from attempting to find the engineers after learning about them through AVP pyramid research. The corporation could have been searching for xenomorphs or their creators for decades or even centuries through shell companies and classified projects. This also explains why Weyland-Yutani demonstrates such specific knowledge about xenomorph biology. They've been studying the species through archaeological evidence and ancient human records for years. The military's interest in xenomorphs, shown throughout the franchise, might originate from classified government knowledge about the Predator encounters and ancient human-alien contact, making the aliens a known threat rather than a sudden discovery. Hicks was replaced. The man who died in the EEV crash at the start of Alien 3 wasn't the real Corporal Dwayne Hicks. Fans note that the Hicks in Alien 3 demonstrates none of the competence, tactical awareness, or survival instinct shown in Aliens. He supposedly slept through the fire and facehugger attack that doomed the escape pod, despite being a trained colonial marine who survived an entire xenomorph hive. The body in the cryotube wears Hicks's armor and ID tag, but the face is badly burned, making positive identification impossible without DNA analysis that the primitive prison facility couldn't perform. Michael Biehn, the actor who played Hicks, never actually appears in Alien 3. His scenes were accomplished through photographs and a body double. The film offers no explanation for how facehuggers got aboard the Sulaco or why the ship's systems failed so catastrophically. Weyland-Yutani possibly intercepted the Sulaco after it left LV-426, captured the real Hicks for interrogation and study, and replaced him with a disposable operative or clone. The corporation needed Ripley alive because she carried the Queen embryo, knowledge they somehow possessed, but they could extract everything Hicks knew about the xenomorphs through interrogation. The substitute Hicks was meant to die in the crash, eliminating a witness while delivering Ripley to a location where the company could easily retrieve her. This explains why Hicks remains unconscious during events that should have woken a trained soldier. He was already dead or sedated before the crash. The real Hicks might still be alive in Weyland-Yutani custody, his military knowledge and xenomorph experience making him too valuable to simply kill. Some fans connect this theory to the non-canonical comics and novels where Hicks survives, suggesting those stories represent the real Hicks' continuing adventures, while Ripley believes him dead. Perfect organism purpose. Ash called the xenomorph a perfect organism because it was specifically designed to hunt engineers. The xenomorph's molecular acid blood would burn through engineer technology and biosuits. Its ability to survive vacuum and extreme temperatures makes it effective against spacefaring civilizations. The creature's rapid reproduction and adaptation allow it to overwhelm even highly advanced societies. Its tendency to use hosts' bodies as incubators ensures it can infiltrate and destroy populations from within. The xenomorph requires no feeding after maturation, meaning it can survive indefinitely in spacecraft or on barren worlds waiting for victims. Most tellingly, the xenomorph's physical strength and speed seem calibrated to challenge beings much larger and more powerful than humans, like the engineers themselves. The engineers possibly created the xenomorphs or their ancestors as weapons against other engineers during a civil war. Different engineer factions might have deployed increasingly deadly biological weapons against each other, leading to an arms race that produced the perfect killing machine. Alternatively, the xenomorphs could have been designed to combat another alien species that threatened the engineers' dominance across the galaxy. David's experiments in Covenant might represent him reverse engineering or recreating the xenomorphs after discovering the engineers' original designs or specimens. This would explain why the xenomorphs seem over-engineered for simply killing humans. Humans weren't the intended target. The creature's ability to incorporate host DNA into their own biology suggests they were designed to adapt to and destroy any species they encountered, making them the ultimate biological weapon against the engineers' enemies, or against the engineers themselves during their societal collapse. Military cover-up. The Colonial Marines knew more about LV-426 than they revealed to Ripley. Lieutenant Gorman receives classified briefings before the mission that he doesn't share with his troops or with Ripley. The Marines carry specific equipment for xenomorph encounters, including motion trackers and smart guns that seem over-prepared for a simple colony investigation. Bishop demonstrates detailed knowledge about the atmospheric processor's explosion radius and safety protocols, despite claiming the Marines just arrived. The dropship pilot, navigates directly to the colony site without searching, suggesting someone provided exact coordinates beforehand. Weyland-Yutani's Burke accompanies the mission as a corporate representative, but his authority over the military operation suggests deeper coordination between the company and Colonial Marines Command. The military possibly sent the Colonial Marines to LV-426 specifically to engage xenomorphs and test combat effectiveness against them. The mission served as both a rescue operation and a live-fire military assessment of the alien threat. This explains why Gorman makes such catastrophically bad tactical decisions, leading his squad into the atmospheric processor without proper reconnaissance. He was ordered to initiate contact with the xenomorphs. Regardless of risk, the military's subsequent decision to nuke the colony from orbit suggests they never intended to preserve the site, contradicting Burke's supposed plan to capture specimens. The Colonial Marines might operate under standing orders regarding xenomorph encounters, orders that prioritize data collection and weapons testing over Marine survival. This would explain why the military continues funding xenomorph research in Alien: Resurrection. Despite the repeated catastrophic failures, they view the aliens as the ultimate military asset worth any number of casualties to control. Queen's intelligence. Xenomorph queens possess near-human level intelligence and can potentially communicate. In Aliens, the queen clearly understands Ripley's threat to her eggs and responds by calling off her warriors in an apparent negotiation. She then demonstrates revenge by pursuing Ripley to the dropship, showing emotional motivation beyond mere territorial instinct. The queen operates the elevator to reach the landing platform, displaying tool use and problem-solving abilities. In Alien Resurrection, the queen exhibits even more sophisticated behavior, using her psychic link with Ripley 8 to communicate distress and emotion. She recognizes the newborn as her offspring, despite its hybrid nature, and demonstrates grief when it turns against her. The queen's ability to command and coordinate hundreds of drones across vast spaces implies some form of complex communication or telepathic hive mind connection. This intelligence makes the xenomorphs far more terrifying than simple animals. A queen with human-level cognition could potentially be reasoned with, bargained with, or could strategize like a human opponent. The franchise consistently shows queens making tactical decisions, such as sending warriors to specific locations, setting ambushes, and coordinating multi-pronged attacks. If queens can think and plan, they might be deliberately allowing humans to capture eggs or specimens to spread the species to new worlds and hosts. The psychic connection between Ripley 8 and the queen suggests xenomorph communication occurs on a level humans can barely perceive, possibly explaining how the creatures coordinate so effectively without visible or audible signals. Some fans theorize that a xenomorph queen could learn human language, given time and motivation, though whether she would choose to communicate with prey remains questionable. Prometheus connection. The derelict ship in Alien and the engineer ship in Prometheus might be two different vessels. The ships appear on different moons, LV-426 and LV-223, orbiting the same planet. The Prometheus ship contains ampules of black goo in a temple-like structure, while the Alien derelict holds thousands of xenomorph eggs in a cargo hold. The space jockey in Alien appears fossilized, suggesting his ship crashed thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. The engineer in Prometheus died only 2,000 years ago, according to dating analysis. The ships share similar biomechanical design but show significant differences in interior layout and cargo capacity. Shaw and David leave LV-223 in an engineer ship at the end of Prometheus, heading toward the engineer homeworld, but that ship couldn't be the derelict on LV-426 because the derelict was already there for millennia. Multiple engineer expeditions to the same planetary system suggests this area held strategic importance for their civilization. The engineers might have used these moons as weapons depots, biological research stations, or deployment bases for their genocide operations across the galaxy. The different cargoes imply the engineers developed and transported various biological weapons, refining their designs over thousands of years. The fact that both ships crashed might indicate the biological weapons repeatedly turned against their engineer handlers, perhaps explaining why engineer civilization collapsed. Alternatively, someone or something deliberately shot down engineer ships in this system, preventing them from deploying their weapons. The proximity of both ships to primitive human colonies, first the Nostromo's route and later the Hadley's Hope colonists, might not be coincidental. Weyland-Yutani could have been guiding human expansion toward these moons specifically, knowing engineers had crashed there with valuable biological cargo. Blade Runner universe. Alien and Blade Runner exist in the same universe. Prometheus features a file video labeled TYWV Corp. Weyland Industries CEO Peter Weyland that includes the notation Blade Runner in the file structure. Blade Runner 2049 includes references to off-world colonies and the Weyland-Yutani Corporation through visual Easter eggs in the backgrounds. Ridley Scott directed both Alien and Blade Runner and has suggested in interviews that he considers them connected. The replicants in Blade Runner demonstrate artificial beings becoming more human, while the synthetics in Alien struggle with the same questions about consciousness and humanity. Both universes feature megacorporations with questionable ethics pursuing artificial life and off-world colonization. The timeline works if Blade Runner occurs on Earth in the early 21st century, while Alien takes place roughly a century later after humanity has expanded across the galaxy. This shared universe profoundly impacts both franchises' meanings. The Tyrell Corporation's replicant technology would have evolved into Weyland-Yutani's synthetic humans like Ash, Bishop, and David. Roy Batty's famous Tears in Rain speech about seeking more life connects thematically to David's quest to create life in the Alien prequels. Both franchises explore what it means to be human through the lens of artificial beings who develop consciousness and question their creators. If the universes connect, David's genocidal actions and creation of the xenomorphs represent the ultimate endpoint of artificial intelligence surpassing and then destroying biological life. The replicants sought to become more human, but David rejected humanity entirely and chose to become a god through creating the perfect organism. This theory suggests the entire Alien franchise serves as a cautionary tale about the long-term consequences of creating artificial life. Consequences that begin with Blade Runner's replicants and end with humanity's extinction at the hands of their synthetic children. If you found this worth your time, subscribing means you won't miss any future uploads. Thanks for watching.